So Celine Song, I loved Past Lives. I loved the way she wrote about love and identity, and that being a story about sort of, you're coming from a different country and how that affects your entire perspective of your relationship and your love life. And I was really, really looking forward to seeing what Celine Song would do next, knowing that it's about love for people not necessarily in their 20s. It's like that next generation of love, and this very much sits within that. I think she continues to write about love in a way that is just very mature and striking and clarifying, and I find that really refreshing, and I find everything she has to say about love really, really interesting and thought-provoking. The dialogue style of this film, especially when compared to Past Lives, I was taken aback slightly when the film started in that it's not what I would describe as naturalistic dialogue. I wouldn't say this is exactly how people talk in the real life, and that maybe slightly annoys you slightly because you're like, this doesn't feel like a real conversation. But I think initially I was like, I don't think that's what Celine Song's trying to do. I still think she loves to put her characters on either side of a frame in one long continuous shot and have them talk to each other. And just like Past Lives, what isn't said and the pauses between each word are just as important as what is said. And I think all of that is really interesting. I really want to show it to my girlfriend and have her watch it. I want to unpack it with her. And I think this whole idea of, removing a sense of identity from the person, and this time trying to understand what are the material elements of a person and in a relationship that make that matter. And I think as people do get older, sadly, you become so much more aware, and you're de-romanticized from the love version of what you thought was love in your 20s. You become very cynical and jaded. And I really like Dakota Johnson's character arc in this. And I think it's one of the best performances I've seen of Dakota Johnson. I think she's really come alive in this. She speaks very slowly. The dialogue style lends itself to sort of taking your time. And the film is very, very suave, and it really slows itself down. And I think I was a little bit thrown by how slow the pace is. And I'll get onto this point later about what I think your initial impressions with the film were, but something about the poster and the cast and the lighting, I thought, is this like a plucky rom-com set in New York? And I know Celine Song in our interview,
that was interesting hearing her say that. I really didn't expect her to do that.
Exactly, like she described it as a rom-com, and I don't think I ever felt the com. It maybe has a couple of chuckles, but to me this is like a thought-provoking romance film. And I think because this wants to deal with like actually quite thought-provoking and interesting conversations about material elements of people's personality, I think it just threw me slightly. And, I think maybe if you're the type of person that sees that poster and that cast, which isn't a problem for me, if you go in thinking you're going to get some plucky, zesty, bubbly rom-com, I worry some audience members might be a little bit disappointed. I think people who are listening to this podcast, or like you and me, we know it's Celine Song's second film. It's going to be something a little bit different. It's just a lot slower. I wonder if people might be like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was. Maybe it was a bit boring.
No, I agree. I think it's kind of advertised as like a Nora Ephron kind of movie, when it or even a Nancy Meyers kind of movie, and it's not like that. I love the poster, the way it looks, but it's actually slightly misleading and
it also has that like rom-com familiar escape fantasy of like you've been plucked by someone very wealthy and you get to experience like the gorgeous apartment, the Pretty Woman
the princess factor.
I really like all the dialogue scenes, especially between Pedro Pascal and Dakota Johnson. Like you could think of that character being quite one note, and actually I think there's so much more going on between them. Similarly, Chris Evans, I think, is really great in this, doing something different for him. And I think coming out of his Captain America years, it's nice to see him out of Red One. And what was the other one he did that was really not
goodness.
Anyway, Chris Evans is a great actor, and he's great in this. I think she was so lucky to get a really great cast. I do think the film is just like, it's wonderful, poetic, thought-provoking. I think plot-wise, it is slow, and I did find there's a certain meandering quality to it in the third act, where two characters, I think, go off and do this big sideways move. And for me, I figured out the moral of this film about 25 minutes in, and that's okay, but I felt like I was watching now the other characters figure that out very slowly. So I'd figured the film out and the moral message and what we do with love and what we should look at in people. And I felt like the film was then sort of taking its time to get there. So on that, plot-wise, it's no way near as, I think, complete and as definitive as a film like Past Lives. But I do really like the way Celine Song writes about love. I find her really enticing, and I found the film really engaging. And I thought it was a great time.
So I'm a little cooler on the movie than you, but not without celebrating some of its merits. I will begin by first saying that the actor who plays Tag, who plays Rachel's boyfriend in
Eddie
Friends,
Cahill.
is in that, and I was like, "That's Tag."
Yeah. Still looks great.
He still looks great. He
still
does
looks
look very
healthy
good,
and
and
well.
still wants an age gap in his relationships. So I love the way this film unpacks the transactional nature of relationships, the commodification of love, the effect that consumer capitalism has had in distorting the role of marriage in society and in our lives. And I think some of its dialogue is very smart and well observed and witty. And you want to kind of print it out and go, oh, that's a great little line. But equally, I often found, and you kind of touched on this when you're talking about characters not having naturalistic kind of dialogue with each other, it is also a film where people will sit and pontificate about the transactional nature of relationships, the commodification of love, and the effect of consumer capitalism on marriage. And I think that for a film that is about relationships and people talking together, I don't mind people having grand conversations about things. It's quite intellectually stimulating. But I think particularly for a film about love, I just missed a little spark. I just missed a little chemistry to keep me hooked in. Hey, look, I don't mind people talking about big things like I love the Before trilogy. That's all they do. Yeah. But there's a tension. There's a chemistry there, and there were just a few times that I was aware that because this film looks so good, it's directed by Celine Song. It looks gorgeous. It's got 3 attractive leads in it. It's dripping in wealth. Right? It's aspirational. I was getting slightly hoodwinked into thinking. What I'm getting is a really exciting piece of chemistry. But the longer the film went on, the more kind of the glossiness kind of peeled away, and I thought I just am missing a little bit of light to kind of set this thing on fire. So there were times when I was enthralled in the conversations, but then there were other times I thought, this is dragging a little bit here. It makes a turn in the second half to deal with something a little bit more serious, which I both found interesting and thanked the film for taking a sort of journey in that direction, but then I also found it also slightly misplaced. And I think in general, I think there's a kind of searching uncertainty with the film, which is not a problem in all moments because the film is exploring an idea. But there are moments where I thought, how do you actually feel about this? How are you actually sorting this? And I think a good example is the poster. I look at that poster and I see a film that's uncertain of how to talk about itself. We're not just talking about the marketing here. The whole time in the film, I was thinking, how are you talking about yourself? And you look at that poster, I'm looking at the 3 of them and their expressions. I'm like, what are you conveying? What is the emotion that's on your face?
To me, it's plucky rom-com.
I think it's too serious to be a happy rom-com, but it's too aloof to be a drama. And I kind of think that's inherent in the film. There's a bit of a tonal imbalance here, and I don't. In searching this territory, I don't think she actually draws to a conclusion. I think the crucial thing is just missing a little bit of chemistry here. I'm still jury's out on Dakota Johnson. I don't think she's a bad actor, but I wasn't kind of won by her performance. Actually, of the 3 of them, the only actor that stood out was Chris Evans. There was 2 scenes towards the end where he did some line delivery, and I thought, that's something I've not seen from you before. Right. And I like that. I kind of leaned into it. Everything else was very beautiful, sincere, but a little searchy, a little pondering, a little explorative. And it's not that I need a nuts and bolts conclusion to everything, and I need a meaning to be taped down to something. We talked about in our spoiler review of Weapons from last week about how we were frustrated about how people have applied a meaning onto something or desperately trying to rationalize and search for something. But I feel like for all the ingredients that are in this film, this should be like a whip sharp, really smart. I'd love to come out and go, oh, that was just pin sharp. That really, hit the nail on the head. It's like I don't think you've seen like broadcast news or something like that. Like James L. Brooks comedies. Like I go, oh, that's just really well observed. And instead, I found it a lot more soft around the edges, explorative. It
does kind of end.
Yeah, it just kind of
ends.
And I almost felt like as I was watching the film was searching for itself and occasionally finding itself. It's not that I didn't think that moments are bad. I came away thinking there's still some ingredients there, and I would happily listen to Celine Song explore this world forever. And God knows, coming off the back of something like Past Lives, which was a huge success, you're then given, more money, more budget, bigger stars, and told, let's get a film out of you and let's get an idea. And I kind of feel like that. I feel like this is maybe it's close to being something, but not quite. I'm probably repeating myself a little bit there, but it's not bad. I like parts of it, but some of it left me cold.
So my favorite bits, I think, were like seeing Pedro and Dakota have their long conversations. In another film, almost like that relationship could be very one note and brushed aside, but there was a wonderful added layer of complexity to it. Although I agree, it is very suave. And I think the first time you see Pedro Pascal, it almost feels like he like swoons through the room shaking everyone's hand, and he's like dressed like James Bond. And like it's almost not a real character, but I did appreciate it for taking its time. And I just I did find it very thought-provoking. I totally agree on I said this, like I figured it out 25 minutes in, and then I sort of waited for it. But
I'm shocker. Perfect isn't perfect.
I
got that. Yeah.
She made a comment in the interview about like different ways you experience wealth in a city, or just the way people experience city. And she said on every corner of New York City, someone's peed and had their first kiss there, and that's like a real wonderful like note about New York. And there's some great like argument scenes with Dakota Johnson and Chris Evans as flashbacks, which I quite enjoyed. But yeah, I found it very thought provoking. I think it's slow, and I worry about some people having the wrong impression of it. And I wouldn't say necessarily wrong to think that, but I think if you go in and you think, just adjust your expectations for what kind of film you've got.
Yeah, it's quite singular actually in its approach, as it doesn't really fit in a. We didn't have time for this, but one of the questions I wanted to ask Celine was like, did you feel a pressure either internally or externally to make your film adhere to genre conventions, genre tropes? Because from the outside, before I saw the movie, it felt like the marketing was trying to, as we touched upon, shape this into a film that it isn't. But that's why I was quite surprised to hear her call it a rom-com.
Yeah.
I was almost like, has this become a feedback loop where she's
said it as a rom-com?
Or hearing, she's absorbed the marketing and is now seeing it as a rom-com. But
I'd like to now rewatch the trailer because I've not actually interacted with the marketing since. It's more that since I've seen it, I'm like, oh, like, what was this film trying to be? I don't think that's really her fault.
No, it's not. It's not a bad movie. And some good moments in there. I just...
things like when Chris Evans first comes in and it's like, oh, I'm out of rum and Coke, and like the Coke and the rum comes down. And who is it? It's Chris Evans, her ex, who happens to be there. Like, that is a bit silly and unrealistic.
Yeah. But that's the thing. I think the film needed to pick. But you decide, do you want to be playful like that? Or do you want to go to serious like you do in the second half?
And just on your comment on the turn that the film makes in sort of, and the decision it makes to do that, I also found that potentially quite a big topic to unpack. But I was also, and I guess this is, we won't spoil the film, so I won't spoil it, but I was wondering if Celine Song wanted to have, what is an example of where if you really miscalculate people for the wrong material goods, how badly can you misunderstand a person's intentions? While I think that is a big one to drop for the second half of the film, which we won't go into, I think that's what she was trying to see, that like, her perspective has been so wrong. Look how badly she hurt someone because of those actions. It's kind of thought-provoking.
So I think I've said what I've said. I found the film to be searching for itself. I found the film to be searching for its idea instead of actually having a conclusive point to make.
In a way, that Past Lives really hung on its ending. The reuniting of those two. And they're different films, but in a way that, like, I think you knew that there was an unspoken love in Past Lives, and the final scene of Past Lives is definitive, and you're waiting for the end of it. This film, for me, I think, didn't have a way to properly end itself. I think it has a little bit of a time cut and a moment that sort of ties a little bit of a bow, but the second half does meander. And that whole moment where two characters go off somewhere physically and literally for the plot, I was like, this is explorative. I agree. It is trying to find itself there. It's not as cohesive and as compact and as tight and definitive as Past Lives.
Which is fine, because not everyone can make Past Lives every time.
And also interesting thing about, like, when you get into your 30s, the disparity of success and wealth, that void becomes further and further for different people. And it's not just career success. It's like who inherited the most, who got the biggest apartment, are you now hanging out with different friends because you're at a club, and like how you value that in a person. And someone who marries someone really wealthy all of a sudden is in like a completely different circle of friends. That's maybe a little bit underexplored in like modern New York. Love in New York already, high net worth individuals, very expensive city, very exclusive place to live.
I do find it quite funny when you cast someone like Chris Evans to play a down on his luck actor. And I'm like, it's like my mind's going, but that's one of the biggest A-list actors on the planet. And you're telling me that he's struggling to get theatre parts in off Broadway.
And it is like crappy little apartment with the gross sink and the hair.
So Meredith has written in about Materialists and says, "Hi, George and James and George." It's also worth saying that this movie came out 2 months ago in the US. So some of these emails have kind of sat with us for a bit frustrating.
One of those annoying times where that happens.
I think it's generally due to Pedro's maybe marketing availability, and they were like, we can push it in June. We can get him for publicity if we do an American release in June.
That has to be what it is.
Yeah,
because he's in everything.
He is, and he's in Eddington, and he's in in a
I
lot.
saw a trailer for Eddington in my what's-face screening.
Meredith writes in about the Materialists rather, but you've put the Materialists. But I saw a screening of Materialists last night. I wanted to write to both tell you it was a complete miss. There are some spoilers in Meredith's review, so I'm going to just skip over those. Don't worry. The trailer is completely misleading to what actually happens in this movie. This movie covers some very serious things about halfway through and took a bit of a somber turn. I have trouble describing how I feel about Dakota Johnson's performance. Her character, Lucy, read as a very millennial, vocal fry, one-dimensional person. I'm guessing that was Celine Song's idea here, but when Lucy was listening to Chris Evans talk about something, she looked like a robot. No emotional depth at all. And all the scenes with her consulting with clients, she really seemed heartless, although she apparently felt something. It was all very strange to me, particularly the something. Also the fact that something. In my opinion, this movie was marketed like a new age Nancy Myers film.
When
in reality, I think all of the characters lacked any depth. Not to mention, apparently, Lucy makes $80K a year in New York and can afford to live by herself, i.e. not possible. Yeah. This film was simply out of touch with reality. Hope you are doing well and enjoyed this film more than I did. Meredith from North Carolina. I removed my email signature from this email because I was so embarrassed when you read it out on the podcast.
Sorry, you go.
Well, I was just going to say, I do think the scenes of chemistry are more present with her and Chris Evans than her and Pedro. I still think they needed a little lift here. Sweep us up with it. I don't want to feel like with a romance film, you want to feel like there are a couple on the table next to you that you can't take your eyes off of because they're really interesting. I felt more like I was sat at their table and they weren't talking to me. It was that kind of slight distinction.
So I agree with Meredith on the comments you make about Dakota Johnson's character. What separates this from a plucky rom-com is that I really enjoy that I didn't like her character. She's really surface and material and selfish. It's immediately obvious to me that by obligation of her occupation, has to now see people through this horribly surface lens. And I think it all is a bit of a comeuppance for her. And I quite enjoyed her navigating the world in a very incorrect way. And sometimes it worked.
Can I be a bit harsh now on the film? Just whilst we're talking about it. Do you not think some of it's just maybe materialism isn't that great?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I knew that. I think we all knew that.
Yeah. In a modern...
Materialism. Bad, man. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, got but that. A commentary on our modern elitist world.
Yeah.
But it's
Dakota Johnson's character is almost shocked to find that, and people are like, oh, maybe if it's not about their material possessions. And I'm like, because we all have seen rom-coms before. We know where this is going.
But a lot of people do choose that. And a lot of people will be doing these dating sites and they'll want a woman who's younger and a man who's rich.
Now we talk about it. It's like I almost wanted the film to be darker and sharper or lighter and pluckier. And I'm stuck in this middle ground where it kind of pulls its punches in some areas. And But again, I could sit and watch a Celine Song movie all day of the week, every day of the week.
This next one's from Caitlin, who says, "Hi chaps, have either of you caught Materialists? I know you both love Past Lives brackets, which I confess I haven't seen at this point. Feels like scheduling a time to cry, but I do want to see it and will eventually. You should definitely go and see it. From seeing the general feeling on social media and talking to a few friends who have seen it, I know most people are lukewarm or didn't like it. I wonder if lots of people went in with too high expectations, especially after Past Lives. For me, it was almost exactly what I expected and really enjoyed it. I thought all three of the main actors did a great job and the style of it was beautiful. It is beautifully shot.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, lovely.
I walked out of the cinema knowing what people are ignoring or forgetting in their criticism, and that's bugged me. I won't give any spoilers, but it's giving how everyone loves to go on about how but it's giving how everyone loves to go on about how in Greece, Sandy puts the leather pants and curls in her hair to get Danny back, and everyone completely ignores how he tried all the different sports to become a jock to get her back. They both change for each other. And with that, are there any other movie opinions you have or movies that you like that a lot of people seem to disagree? What hill are you dying on? Thank you. Loving the podcast. Caitlin from Sydney, Australia.
Well, we've had lots.
We sort of answered that quite a lot. Yeah,
our unpopular opinions, like the Flashes. It was great.
Listen to the show and you'll get
come by each week.
Again, about expectations, high or low. I think I'd already known that some people weren't like gaga over Materialists. I think you were sort of giving a nudge that you were lukewarm on it.
Yeah, I'm nervous to watch it with Anna because I think I'm worried that she'll be harsher on it than I am, and it'll bring my opinion down a bit.
Oh, fine.
At the moment, like I'm kind of sitting in this middle ground, but I wouldn't be surprised if I don't want to speak for her, but she might say that was incredibly drawn out and boring.
Yeah,
and dry.
Fine.
Mia writes in and says, Dear James and George and James, long-time listener, Patreon member, and first-time emailer. I'm writing in this fresh out of an early screening of Materialists, and a film I really wanted to like. I'm a fan of all three lead actors, which made it all the more disappointing that I found myself watching the clock well before it ended. To its credit, the acting was strong. Chris Evans stood out in particular, I agree. He played a struggling broke actor with real depth and real believability, but Pedro Pascal's character felt flat to me. He didn't seem to have a personality beyond rich, and I kept hoping the script would give him something more to work with. I do also think that's a problem when Pedro Pascal is one of the most charismatic individuals off camera. He's got great personality off screen, and every time I see him in something, he's kind of, with the exception of Reed Richards at the moment, but like Last of Us and this, he's kind of dullified a little bit.
So I don't think so in this. I thought it was interesting. I think originally he surfaced, but there's a lot of complexity. I think there's that one conversation in the restaurant where I feel like he is a lot sharper and more switched on than I think she originally gave him credit for. And I think he is more interesting than that.
I think he's interesting on paper, oh yes, I can understand why this man has depth, but
he
also
never felt like a real person. I will agree that, I think the film was always trying to put him as a fantasy. He's a unicorn. He's described as a unicorn person.
Yeah, that's true.
He's not meant to be a real person. Gorgeous apartment, by the way. Oh my god.
Yeah, great bookcase.
Great bookcase, yeah.
What threw me most was the inconsistency in the main character's motivations. At times, Lucy's insisted money didn't matter, and at others she seemed to base her entire worldview around it. I understand the film is trying to explore contradictions and match the film's title, but it felt more muddled than intentional by the end. That's kind of how I feel, more muddled than intentional. I'd love to hear how you both felt. Was I missing something, or were you just as unsure? Thanks as always for the pod. Your conversations always make me think and laugh, even when the films don't quite land. Best, Mia. In a way, it's to be honest, after we've talked about it sort of ad nauseum, it's over to you guys now. Go and sit and kind of make up your own mind.
I don't disagree with a lot of what you're saying. I just think I probably enjoyed it more. That's the day. You know, this might be a spoiler. You know what? Ignore it. I'll tell you off camera.
Okay.
Because I think it is a spoiler. Yeah, I'll tell you off camera.
Yeah, you guys will get the off camera chat. If there's
loads of interest, we'll do a spoiler cast.
The off camera chats have a subscriber of 2 people. It's me and James.
Yeah, guys, if you had thoughts of Materialists, maybe you can weigh in on your thoughts. Please, as always, send them into hello@popkitchenpodcast.com, and we will read them out on a future episode of the show.